I'm Phil Mattingly.
And I'm John Heilemann. And with all due respect to Donald Trump, now this is a beautiful wall. All right. Good evening, sports fans, and I mean that literally tonight. Good evening from Fenway Park in Boston. There is only one thing that this part of the country loves more than politics, and that's baseball. So tonight we're talking to Red Sox President Larry Lucchino about both. But first, it is a historic day in America. Both the President of China and the Pope of Vatican City are visiting. President Xi landed in Seattle today. He'll spend the next 7 days in the United States, including a state dinner at the White House on Friday. Meanwhile, Pope Francis is in Washington, D.C., where he'll give a speech to Congress on Thursday, followed by stops in New York and Philadelphia over the course of the next 6 days. Phil, my question for you, which of these two momentous occasions will have the bigger long-term effect on American politics?
The White House would love for it to be the Pope's visit. They feel like they can pivot off a number of his top issues. It's President Xi Jinping's visit, and here's why. China, obviously, second largest global economy, some saying it's going to be leading to the first. It's a very tense relationship right now. If the Obama administration can figure out some type of broader deal on cybersecurity, if they can figure out how to deal with the East China Sea, that sets us up longer term better than anything Pope Francis can say.
Phil, this is why I invite you on the show, because you are a wonk in the extreme. In this case, unfortunately, you're right. In the short term, politically, the Pope's visit causes huge problems for Republicans. In the past, we used to have a conservative Pope who would give problems to Democrats who were running for president. Now we have a liberal Pope who's giving fits to Republicans who are running for Congress. There's a huge number of, I believe, 6 Catholic Republican presidential candidates, all out of step with the Pope on climate change, immigration, Cuba, the Iran deal, income inequality, all of it. Fits. But in the long run, China is more important politically, geostrategically, economically, and that's why, sadly, I'm afraid you are right.
Tape that. Everybody tape that, frame that. One thing I will say, though, talking to White House officials, obviously very excited about this visit. There's some nervousness about what he could say. They obviously aren't in line on every single issue, and you can't control what the Pope is going to say when he visits the White House, when he visits Congress. There are issues the Pope could go after that could make them look bad.
That's absolutely right. It'll be interesting to see a House chamber where no one is allowed to applaud or boo, hopefully, the Pope. Let's hope for that.
It is a crazy time for the Republicans running for the White House right now. You have Scott Walker. He's no longer in the race. Donald Trump, he's picking a fight with Bill O'Reilly. Ted Cruz, he's threatening to shut down the government. Ben Carson is not doubling but tripling down on his position that a Muslim should not be president. Meanwhile, Jeb Bush is in Iowa doing the most boring thing imaginable. He's talking regulatory reform. John, what is Jeb Bush thinking right now?
Phil, you know, Jeb Bush is trying to be the grown-up in this race. The loss of Scott Walker and Rick Perry, 2 governors, notably, who have gotten out of the race. Jeb Bush yesterday made a comment where he said, these 2 guys were serious executives. They knew how to govern. They're gone. And then he made a snarky comment about backbenchers, legislators who don't get anything done except file amendments. Jeb Bush wants to be the guy who knows how to run something. And by talking about things that he has run and putting forward ideas about how he would run the federal government, he wants to be that establishment consensus candidate that Scott Walker said last night Republicans must rally around.
Let me tell you what Danny Diaz, Tim Miller, Mike Steele, all of Miami really like. A New York Times headline that says,
apart from caipirinhas, you
Jeb Bush plans to alter federal regulations to invigorate the economy. That is a New York Times headline that they love. They will cut out, they will print. This is the joyful tortoise, right? He wants to be substantive. This is the joyful tortoise.
The joyful tortoise.
That's Jeb Bush's own words.
That should be on a bumper sticker.
Be in it for the long haul. Be able to pivot back to what he did as Florida governor, which some of this plan does, and show that he's got policy that can last.
For a while, Chris Christie was in the pole position in terms of substance, putting out policy papers, white papers. Jeb Bush now has done this almost every 10 days or so since late summer. He's coming out on every issue, laying down markers on policy. Again, he wants to be the grown-up in the room when Republicans, he hopes, turn away from the children. All right, Hillary Clinton, another grown-up in the room, has finally taken a position on the Keystone Pipeline. She is against it. She made news at an event in Des Moines, Iowa today, where she was there to talk about her prescription drug plan, her new plan on that. But she got sidetracked by a Drake university student who asked her about Keystone. Clinton replied that Keystone, quote, interferes with our ability to combat climate change. Therefore, I oppose it. Phil, this was a long time coming. Is it good policy? And is it good politics?
I want to expand it to good PR. This question and answer, whether it was arranged or not, it seemed random, came at the same exact time the Pope was walking into the White House to meet with the President of the United States of America.
Right.
So when it comes to the burial of an issue, not bad.
Right.
Look, on the policy side of things, she had to say something. I believe, and when you talk to her team, they feel much like the Obama administration feels, that this is an issue that has gotten far bigger than what it deserves on the policy grounds. On the politics side, unions aren't going to be happy with this, but the Greens are going to love it. There's a lot of money over there, and so I think, it's kind of, it goes half and half.
She really did want, as she said today in a kind of hemming and hawing way, she wanted the White House to be out in front on this, but she kept getting asked about it. She finally felt like she had to say something, and the fundamental political reality of Hillary Clinton's life right now is she must not allow someone who's a plausible commander-in-chief to be able to get to a space on her left on pretty much anything. And she thinks that, her husband thinks that. Bernie Sanders, they don't worry about him in the long run. Rightly or wrongly, they don't worry about him. Joe Biden, they worry about. Elizabeth Warren, they still worry about. She was not going to end up being for the Keystone Pipeline under these circumstances.
I would say one thing. The one thing I didn't understand, which I'm putting the White House on notice. You know who did not care about that? The White House.
The White House, right.
All right. Last night, 3 presidential aspirants sat down on late-night shows. You had Ted Cruz on Colbert, Sanders, he was on Wilmore, Fiorina on Fallon.
I'm like a kid in a candy store. I am having so much fun because...
Who's paying for the candy?
So if you want to change the marriage laws...
I'm asking what you want.
I believe in democracy. I believe in democracy, and I don't think we should trust...
Guys, however you feel, he's my guest, so please don't boo him.
You could say, look, my plans for criminal justice reform and to help the black community are on fleek.
On fleek. Larry Wilmore says that I should tell you that my plans for criminal justice reform are on fleek. That is it.
I have 2 dogs, Snickers and Max. They're Yorkshire Terrier, but I have to explain. See, I make up songs. My mother and I used to sing together all the time. My name's Snick, and I'm lazy. Please don't take a walk with me. I'd rather stay right here at home instead. I want to lie back down in my nice warm bed. My name's Snick, and you're gonna have to carry me.
John, as the dulcet tones of Ja Rule blare behind us, who you got in that bevy of late-night appearances?
Look, Ted Cruz deserves credit for going into the lion's den on Colbert. Bernie Sanders did fine with Larry Wilmore. Carly Fiorina, the hands-down winner last night. She is playing a hot hand right now, but the one legitimate criticism of her debate performance in Simi Valley was that she came across as too stern, not human enough, not funny enough. She goes on a high-rated show and shows her softer side, does it with some charm, some panache. Big win for her last night on Fallon.
The Fiorina bump. It is a thing. Jimmy Fallon last night, best ratings in 18 months for a Monday overnight. Smoked Kimmel, smoked Colbert. Carly Fiorina, in turn, smoked Ted Cruz. She was good last night, and the ratings were just as good about it. What's the deal with the late night thing? Is this something that's going to stick? Everybody going to do it every week from here on out?
I think we're going to see a presidential candidate on a late night show almost every day for the rest of the year. I don't know. Maybe it'll wear out its welcome sometime, but not soon. All right. We will have Red Sox President Larry Lucchino to talk politics and baseball live from this glorious place, Fenway Park, after this message. Joining us presently is the president and CEO of the Boston Red Sox, Larry Lucchino, stepping down at the end of this season after 3 decades, 4 decades, 5 decades, infinite number of decades at the commanding heights of the sports business here at Fenway. He has won 3 world championships since he took the helm more than a decade ago. Larry, thanks for having us here.
Welcome to Fenway Park, Heilemann.
Cathedral of baseball.
Nice to see you. Welcome, Phil.
You are an unusual man. I was talking to Peter Gammons about you just now. Just on your sports business career alone, incredible. But if we go back further, your life, Forrest Gump-like, kind of intersected with some rather important political figures. I'm going to ask you about two of them.
Okay.
The first, Princeton University. You played basketball with Bill Bradley. What was it like? Tell us about that experience.
Well, it was a great experience. I was a lowly, insignificant sophomore when Bradley was a senior carrying us on his back to the Final Four. I was one of the early fundraisers for him, I remember, in the late 70s when he ran for office. But he was apart from the rest of us. He was a different player, and still a very good guy.
A very good guy. The other person whose paths you crossed with was Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
At Yale Law School.
Yes.
And then in Washington, D.C.
Right.
I gather you liked her a little better once you started working with her than when you were in school.
I knew her better when I worked with her, and
Yeah.
she was indefatigable.
Yeah.
We all worked pretty hard. It was Watergate, and it was the impeachment, and it was big and important stuff to us. We were just first year out of law school, and she had a work ethic that was extraordinary.
Did you know President Clinton when you were at Yale Law School also?
He was actually more of a peripheral guy, and he was not around so much. Hillary was in the mainstream, and Bill was off in Texas doing some political stuff.
I assume because you guys are such old friends, you'll be supporting her in this presidential election.
I have supported Hillary in the past. Let me say that.
An artful answer. Well done. I'm still an undecided voter.
I want to continue a little bit of the tour of your past life, and that was when you worked with Edward Bennett Williams, who's been called a mentor of yours. He's the original super lawyer, I think. Yeah. But one of the most interesting things about his career is that everybody went to him, Democrats, Republicans.
Right.
He's truly bipartisan. When you look at the town now, do you see that ever happening again, or somebody who could represent something like that?
Well, I mean, the book about Edward Bennett Williams' life was called The Man to See.
Right.
And he was indeed the man to see, not just for legal problems or criminal problems, but also for just general advice on life, general advice on the ways of Washington. And it's been a while since I've been in D.C. and or in Baltimore
By
with the
design?
Orioles. So yeah, it's I don't know. For me, I have a bias. I mean, my whole career in sports is directly attributable to him and the opportunities he gave me and the doors he opened for me. So I don't ever think there'll be anyone quite like him, but that's a biased point of view.
Now, as you note, you are kind of a baseball lifer now when you look at what happened with the Orioles, here at the Red Sox. What's your take on the state of the game right now? You had the post-steroids era, the post-C-League era. Where are we now with the game of baseball?
The game is actually, I think, in pretty good shape right now. I think there's a high level of competitive balance, which was one of the issues we were bothered by for some time. The steroid era has passed. The 9th commissioner, Bud Selig, and the 10th commissioner, Rob Manfred, I think are determined to eradicate that from the game and have done a great job doing that. I think that there is a popularity about the game that certainly applies to most of America, and we've made a major effort to do two things. One is to call all kids. It's the campaign we have here at the Red Sox this year, calling all kids to make the game younger and reach out more to kids. And the 10th commissioner, Rob Manfred, is very determined to expand the international activities and horizons of baseball. So I think baseball's ready for another uptick. I do believe, and I think it's enduring in its capacity to fill our summers.
When we think about your career on the baseball side with the Orioles and then with the Red Sox, you saw a lot of change in the course of the sport. We were talking upstairs earlier about building Camden Yards, getting that done, and changing the way that baseball stadiums looked across America. When you think about, I want to ask you about the Red Sox specifically in a second, but more broadly, how's the business of baseball changed in your lifetime?
Oh, it's changed dramatically. It's much larger than it used to be. It's much more professional than it used to be. It's much more sophisticated than it used to be. It used to be that the front office was filled with a few old buddies, high school buddies or fishing buddies of the owner, and something happened I would say began in the 70s, perhaps with the labor movement, bringing in some good people and new ideas, but it is much more sophisticated approach to the business of sports.
Well, when you guys arrived here, this ownership group, you, John Henry, all your other colleagues, Tom Werner, you guys encountered a situation that people now forget that the Red Sox were not this indomitable franchise. They've not had a great year this year, but you guys are a hugely successful business, a global brand in a lot of ways. That was not how it was when you got here. Right. What were the biggest challenges you faced when you arrived in Boston, and how did you overcome them to build this thing into what it is now? Well,
one of the biggest challenges was where we're sitting right now, Fenway Park. The consensus of our fan base and certainly of the media was that Fenway Park had seen its better days, and it was time for a new ballpark somewhere else in Boston. Right. And John Henry, Tom Werner, and I believed that there was something magical, special about Fenway Park. Now, maybe because we had a different perspective coming from other baseball teams, and so we were determined to preserve and protect and enhance and improve Fenway Park. That was a big challenge. When we came here, the Red Sox regularly were bridesmaids, runners-up. In fact, my cell phone number is 2222, which I picked back then to remind me every day that the Red Sox were always finishing second to the Yankees. Excuse me. So there was a need.
I assume your number now is the 111.
No. I've not been that bold. But when we came here, we said we want to field a team that's worthy of the fan support. We want to preserve, protect, improve Fenway Park. We want to be active and aggressive marketers of this team, so it's not just Boston's team, but it's New England's team, it's the national team, it can be an international team. And fortunately, we wanted to be active in the charitable philanthropic activities of the club. And finally, as a throw-in, we said we were going to eradicate the curse of the Bambino. We said that on December 21st, 2001, at our very first press conference. And 3 years, according to our astute business plan, we ended the...
Okay, two quick ones before you go. How did you get Dan Shaughnessy to write a bullet-pointed "Why I Love Larry Lucchino" column, and which of your world championships is the favorite?
Well,
I know you can't do
the first question, I think, with Shaughnessy, it was just a question of balance. He had written so many bullet point items about what he didn't like about me and us that he was just trying. I guess there was a feeble effort at journalistic balance, trying to write some nice things on the other side.
I figured a bribe was actually what you said. You sort of said a B word.
I think he had his tongue in his. I think he had his tongue in his cheek that whole time.
And you go 04?
04 will always be special. 07 was special because we made some trades that year for Josh Beckett and for Mike Lowell, and the year before, and it was nice to win. We had a slogan. After we won in 04, our slogan was "Any group of schlemiels can win once." Yeah. So we had to win it a second time. And 13 was really special as well because of the Boston Marathon.
You just asked a man to choose among his children, and he refused to choose among his children. Larry Lucchino.
All right, Heilemann, nice to see you. Thanks, Phil.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for doing this interview. We'll be right back with New England Republican Major Domo Tom Rath after these words from our sponsors.
Joining us now is Tom Rath. You can find him at Poll Guru on Twitter. He is the veteran New Hampshire Republican and a big fan of John Kasich, and possibly a bigger fan of the Boston Red Sox. Tom, thanks for really doing the hardship duty coming to Fenway Park.
Thank you very much.
To hang out with us today. I want to start with kind of the biggest news of the week. Scott Walker, what are your impressions about what happened and what lessons can maybe Team Kasich take from that?
Well, I think for Scott Walker, you hate to see a campaign go down and you feel bad for all the people involved. I thought he had a remarkable chance to carve out a spot in this field, and for whatever reason, sometimes it doesn't work, and I admire the fact that they faced up to the reality and got out. But I think there's two kinds of geography in politics: political geography and real geography. Political geography, he was taking up the sort of a little bit both, but the lane that I think he was trying to get into was this center governing conservative lane, and he just never really got a chance to articulate that.
And lessons that you can take?
Well, you got to keep control of the checkbook.
Right. Yes, they were spending a lot of money. Do you think that Walker? I mean, everybody's happy that Walker's out. Who's a rival to Walker? Do you think that John Kasich, can benefit in some particular way from Walker's departure from the race?
Well, you never benefit from somebody else's misfortune, but I will say this: the political geography is where John Kasich fits. The governing conservative who gets results. That's good for us. The second piece is the real geography, because after we get through the SEC primary on the 1st of March, we head to the industrial Midwest. That ought to be a good place for us, and that's where that state now is very much in play.
So Kasich Super PAC put up this ad. They've been doing a lot of advertising in your state. They put one up the other day with kind of a tongue-in-cheek mocking Donald Trump Kasich helicopter. Kasich has done pretty well staying out of Trump's crosshairs. Do you have any concern about now Donald provoking Donald's ire and him going after the governor?
Look, I don't think you poke in the cage. You don't have to. Our position has been we have a positive message. We're going to talk about things that we care about. The problem we had in the debate was that was a debate that was set up to say you said this, he said this. We're not into that. We haven't had that kind of exchange with anybody.
Right.
We'll keep talking about what we'll keep talking about. We'll do fine.
Carly Fiorina has been on the rise. Obviously, great debate performance according to everyone. What's your sense of Carly Fiorina in New Hampshire?
I think she's got a lot of interest. I think she's got some very good people working for her. I think she's had good trips up there. She's like everybody else. This field is scrambled right now. If nationally, if the front runner's at 24, that means everybody's in the game. And I think she's in the game. Everybody tends to get a moment. The real question is, can you sustain that moment?
Do you sense, some people sense that Donald Trump is losing a little altitude post-debate. Do you sense any of that in New Hampshire where he is still the front runner?
It's hard to say. I look more at the numbers that Carson got.
Yeah.
Because I think if you took Carson and Trump's numbers together, they're sort of where Trump was.
Right.
And I'm wondering whether Carson is an away station for people who've got out there with the anger and are now sort of moving back and looking at other people, and whether that puts that in play. Donald Trump's going to be Donald Trump.
I got to ask you, we're here in Fenway Park. You're a season ticket holder for
Right
this team, right up there. In all your years, what's your single favorite Fenway memory?
I'm going to be, well, there's two. One is Pedro in the All-Star game.
Yeah.
But the other one was we were here for the 6th game in 2013. I've been coming to this park for 58 years.
Yeah.
I never thought I would be here when they won. It was one of the most, and the whole park stayed.
Yeah.
There was no riot. They just stayed. It was a wonderful night.
Yeah.
That's what I'll remember for a long time.
I think I may have even seen you here that night.
Okay.
Tom Rath, always a pleasure.
Yes, sir.
Always an honor. And we'll be right back. Normally we do not do another guest at the end of the show, but today, since we're at Fenway Park, we figured we'd bring in David Ortiz.
Why not?
Why not? You know, we're here. David, tell us, Larry Lucchino, what's your best Larry Lucchino memory as he prepares to step down?
Well, besides when I had to sit down to talk about my contract with him, we got so many memories about Larry. You know, Larry always, besides being the CEO of the organization, you know, he always been a really good mentor.
A good mentor. We are always on the tube every day and on the web. And now we're going to say goodbye from me and Phil and David Ortiz. Here we go.
Sayonara.
Sayonara.